Hi, this is Sepha Kirshblum, and tonight is technically the 16th class of King David's Diaries, or the first of this new semester. Acharei Chagim, the winter's man, however you want to refer to this time. It is Sunday, October 26th at 8 p.m. in Israel time, because I know we changed the clocks and not everyone else has yet. Okay, so I want to bring us all back to speed. We've had a lovely, beautiful break of the summer and Chagim. And I want to be able to just bring us back so we're all feeling on the same page of David's life, what's going on, and where everyone is at, so to speak. So to go back to previous week's shiurim, the story ended where we left off was when David finally brought the Aron back into Yerushalayim. And what's so spectacular about that time is we really have to go back even further, to that idea that we entered Shmuel Bet, and first, he was only the king in Hebron, only of Shevet Yehuda, of his own Shevet. And then ultimately, after obviously some strife, and I'm not belittling the civil wars and everything that went on within the Jewish people, but this concept, this amazingness of, wow, he finally becomes the king over the entire nation. He is finally the king over all of the Jewish people. And we're all on the same page, and all the Jews want him, and all the Jews support him. And everyone is excited to have David as their king. And as soon as literally the dust settles of becoming king and taking the throne, he thinks to himself, right? And this is what we did those last two prakim. My gosh, if I'm here and I'm feeling secure, how could it be that the Aron of Hashem is not feeling secure and has a permanent home, right? We even saw that parak where he was debating if he should make a palace and create this home for himself. And he starts, and then he's like, wait, where is the Aron, right? So he goes to get the Aron, and there's the horrible scene of Peretz Uzzah, right? The Aron was shaky in the back of the carriage, and Uzzah runs to grab it to make sure that it's okay, right? So he goes to grab it, and as soon as he touches it, God is angry and he dies, right? And we saw what a powerful scene that was for David. Vayera, right? He is scared of God, right? And that Yirat Hashem that enters into his world is not just new, but it freaks him out, right? What is this? What is happening? How could it be that I'm trying to do something for HaKadosh Baruch Hu and he's angry? And he would take a life, and everything for David shifts in that moment. And at first, he is too scared of the Aron, right? He throws it into someone else's house and doesn't want to deal with it until 3 months go by, and they come and tell him, no, 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 the Aron is blessing this house. It's time. And he creates this massive parade to bring the Aron back to Yerushalayim. And he does. And every few steps, he brings karbanot and he's dancing and he brings it back to Simcha. And it shows us how incredible it is of, wow, it came back. He feels good, right? We ended sadly on that slightly negative tone of his fight with Michal, his wife, but the Aron is back. And that is where we are going to be opening now into Perek Zion, right? He feels this confidence, this excitement, this joy, right? And here is what happens. Perek Zion, Pasuk Aleph. I'm just going to make it even a little bigger and see if that is too big or not. Oh, no, that's perfect, I think. I hope. Um, so for me, the size of font is great. So we are in Shmuel Bet, Perek Zion, Pasuk Aleph. Vayihi ki yashav hamelach beveito. Hashem hiniach lo misaviv mikol oivav, right? And it was that the king is sitting in his house, aka his palace, right? David is feeling secure and good. Hashem hiniach lo misaviv mikol oivav, right? And wow, for David, this is incredible, right? He has nach, he has this rest all around from all of his enemies, right? This is David. This is the guy who's fought the Plishtim. He fought Goliath. He fought Shaul. He fought Ishbosheth. He fought Avner, right? His life has been wars. His life has been turmoil. And now, Vayanach, right? He's just chilling. Pasuk Bet, Vayomer Hamelech El Natan Hanavi, And the king now turns to Natan Hanavi, his personal Navi, right? Back in the day, every king had a Navi that was assigned to them. And he turns to Natan and he says, Re'ina anochi yoshev bebeit arazim. Right? He says, oh my gosh, right? Look, I'm sitting in a house made of cedar wood, right? Something significant. V'aron ha'elokim yoshev betocha yiri'ah. Right? He looks at Natan and he's like, something feels off about this, right? I'm sitting in this incredibly secure, amazing home, but the Aron is in a tent, in a nothing. I'm not comfortable with this. Pasuk Gimel, Vayomer Natan el Hamelach, and Natan turns to the king and he says, Kol asher b'lvavcha lech aseh ki Hashem imach. Right? Wow. Right? Natan looks at him and he's like, I see where you're going with this, David. Right? I see. Right? Everything you want, all that is in your heart, you go do it. God supports you, right? I get it. I see you want to build a house for it. God is with you. Oh my gosh, right? Amazing news. Now, spoiler alert, most of us know the end of the story, and that is not how it goes down, right? This is not what happens. So you read this pasuk, and it's almost like you have to do a double take. And you're just like, wait, it seems like Natan was really supportive and really helpful, but is that what happens? No, pasuk talid. Vayihi balayla hahu, and it was on that night. Vayihi dvar Hashem el Natan lemor. Right, Hashem has to come to Natan, and I can only imagine how awkward this is for Natan. Right, he's a Navi. He assumes he had this direct connection with God, and that he saw David's want, and he is all on the same page. But then Hashem comes to him that night, and he says, right, Pasuk Hey, Lech va'amarta el avdi el David. No, Natan, right? You have a new message. You have a new nevuah that you're going to have to give over. But what a gorgeous, gorgeous intro, right? I want you to go tell Avdi el David, right? I want you to go talk to David, who is my Eved, right? My servant, which is the greatest possible compliment HaKadosh Baruch Hu gives, right? This is the greatest. Moshe was an Eved Hashem. Yoshua ends up getting, that concept, Avraham, but there are very few and far in between humans that God says, I consider you my Eved, right? And he's saying, David, you have now hit that potential and spot. You are my servant. But here is the message. Ko Amar Hashem. Right? This is the message from Hashem. You just hear the warmth. Ata tivna li bayit l'shivti. Oh my gosh, David, you wanted to build a house for me? You wanted to build a place for me to live? Lo yashavti babayit l'miyom ha'aloti et b'nei Yisrael mitzrayim va'ad hayom hazeh. Wow, David, I hope you appreciate what I'm appreciating right now. I never had a house. I never had a home, right? Since the day I took the Jewish people out of Mitzrayim until today, right? The Mishkan wasn't permanent. It wasn't considered a home in the same way. So he's saying, I never had an actual permanent place. I was always literally just in a tent, open Mishkan, right? Everything I had was always temporary. Pasuk Zion. B'chol asher hitalachti b'chol b'nei Yisrael, hadavar dibarti et echad shiftei Yisrael asher tiviti lirot et ami et Yisrael lemor lama lo banitem li bayit arazim. Right, but then he says, but did you ever notice, David, that did I ever complain? Right? Did I ever say to any of the Shvatim, why haven't you built me a house yet? Right? Why hasn't this house of cedar wood and strength be built yet? I haven't complained. I haven't asked. Pasuk Chet, therefore va'ata, and now ko tomar la'avdi David. Please go tell my servant David. Ko amar Hashem tzvakot. Here are the words of Hashem. Ani lekachticha min hanaveh me'achar hatzon. Right? Oh, I'm getting nostalgic, David. Do you remember when we met, right? Do you remember when I found you out in Nowheresville, right? It was just you and the sheep, right? Back when you were Hakatan in Yishai in your daddy's house. I chose you, I like almost like plucked you, Lihiot Nagid, to make you a leader and to run my nation, Al Ami Al Yisrael, right? I chose you out of everybody and chose you to be the king of the Jewish people. Pasuk Tet v'hayeh imcha, sorry, b'chol asher halachta, and I have been with you every step of the way, every place you've gone, everything you've been through, I've been with you. Achorta et kol oivecha, I cut off all of your enemies, mipanecha, from before you. Va'asiti lecha shem gadol, and I made you a name. I made you who you are. Kishem hagdolim asher ba'aretz, right? You're not just a name. You're of the greatest names, and I did that for you. Pasuk Yud. V'samti makom la'ami Yisrael unitativ, right? And I made a place for my nation and I planted them, right? Literally, they're growing. Shachan tachtav, v'lo yirgaz od, v'lo yosifu b'nei avla la'anoto, ka'asher barishona, right? And I let you guys flourish and I've let the nation flourish. You're not suffering under oppression like you had been in the beginning. Pasuk Yud Aleph, u'lemin hayom asher tziviti shoftim al ami Yisrael, v'hanichoti lecha mikol oivecha, right? Since the day I plopped you here, and after the times of Yehoshua, after it was conquered, and we had the Shoftim, right? I have made sure that ultimately you've survived all of your enemies. V'higid lecha ki bayit ya'aseh lecha Hashem. But did I once say, I need you to build me a house now? No, meaning, David, it's been amazing. You are number one, Avdi. Number two, I made you into something special because I see so much potential in you. But why are you looking to do something I haven't asked you for? Right? Why is this like sitting on you so much? Pasuk Yud Bet, ki im le'uya mecha. David, I have full confidence in everything that's going to be with you and your rulership because you'll live a full life, right? Ki im le'uya mecha, you'll live your full years. V'shachafta et avotecha. And then you will lie down with your forefathers, right? This is the Tanakh saying you're going to pass away. And then, right? Whoa, v'hakimoti etzaracha acharecha, asher yitzei mime'echa, v'hachinoti et mamlachto. Right? This pasuk is mind-blowing, specifically to David, but I think hopefully to all of us when we take a minute and look at it, right? David, you're amazing. David, I made you king. David, I made you a name, but I didn't need you to make me a house, right? So here's what I'm going to say to you, David, right? I'm going to do something fabulous for you, David. Not just will you live out your life and go to your grave in peace, but Hakimoti etzaracha acharecha. I will raise your child after you, right? Hakim, I will establish him, I will raise him, and not just your kid, Asher Yitzemi Me'echa, your kid that is literally going to come from you. And I think this pasuk means even a little bit more in this week's parsha, right? We're coming on the parsha of Lech Lecha, right? And one of the debates that Avram consistently has with God, right, is you keep saying I'm going to be a great nation. And you keep saying people are going to come from me. But when you say they're going to come from me, do you mean like my servant Eliezer? Or do you mean like Lot, my nephew? Right? He has to keep pushing God until God says, no, 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 it's your DNA, right? You will have a child that's your DNA, right? And that's what God is saying to David here. You're going to have a child of your DNA, right? I promise it's your DNA that will establish the throne after you. Hachinoti et mamlachto, and I will literally prepare his melucha. Right? Don't forget, it's often we almost bypass this idea. David is only the second king in the Jewish nation. The first king was Shaul, and everyone did assume Yonatan, his son, would take the throne, right? Until David came out of nowhere, literally, like God plucked him from a field with the sheep. right? The assumption is what all the other nations have, a dynasty. It goes from king to prince, from king to prince. But then God threw us a curveball and said, no, not how I necessarily see things, right? Shaul, I wanted to be king. He didn't rise to the occasion. And now I found someone better, someone from a totally different Shevet, someone who you never saw coming, right? So deep down, what does David fear underneath it all? And legitimately so, maybe after me is not going to be one of my children, right? Maybe just like Shaul, it's going to leave and go to some other new family. So Hashem says, no, 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 I want to be very, very clear. What I'm so enthralled about you, David, is it's not just going to be you. Because of everything you've done, it will also be your children. And this child that's going to come from you, I will establish his throne, right? Pasuk Yud Gimel, Hu Yivneh Bayit Lishmi. But David, sweetheart, you are not going to be the one that builds me a Beit HaMikdash. This child that I am telling you is going to come from you and is going to take the throne, etc. He will build me this house you have intentions about. V'konanti et kisei mamlachto ad olam. And I will establish his melucha, his empire, forever. Right? This is not a bracha Shaul ever got. This is not something David expected to hear. Right? But this is the promise, right? He will have the forever throne. Pasuk Yudalid. Ani ehyeh lo la'av. I will be for him a father. V'hu yiyeh li leben, and he will be like a son to me. Asher b'havoto v'hochachti b'shevet anashim v'neg'ei b'nei adam. Right? And I will protect him. He will be in charge of all, and he will rule the nation. Right? And this is obviously prophetic. Obviously, it's God, so obviously it's prophetic. But to us, it's all the more prophetic, right? For those of us who know the rest of the story, and again, I'm so sorry if it is a spoiler alert, right? Shlomo Hamelech, his child that is going to take the throne, his child is only going to be 12 years old when his father dies, right? When David dies and Shlomo has to take the throne, he's a child for all intents and purposes. And Hashem is saying, oh, don't worry, I'm going to be his dad. You're right. He may not have a dad at the time. I will be like a father to him, and he will be my son, right? What incredible love and devotion God is giving over in this pasuk. Pasuk Tedvav, right? Oh, sorry, did I? No, I didn't. Okay, perfect. Going back one more time. V'chasti lo yasur mimenu ka'asher hasiroti me'im Shaul, right? And now God is saying, I see what's inside your heart, David. I know exactly what you're scared of. And so I'm just going to say it out loud. I'm going to just verbalize it here, right? Everything I've done for you, all the chesed I have shown you, lo yasur mimenu. I'm not going to take it away from you like I did to Shaul, right? Of course you're scared. You saw Shaul in his prime. You saw Shaul take the throne, and I was so supportive, and God was with him. But then you saw me leave him and abandon him and go to you. And therefore, of course, that's your fear. But I am telling you, I will never leave you. Pasuk Tetzayin, v'ne'eman beitcha u'mamlachtecha ad olam lefanecha. I am ensuring your kingdom forever. Kisachaya nachon ad olam, right? The dynasty of David will be eternal. Pasuk Yud Zayin, kechol hadvarim ha'ela ukechol hachizayon hazeh kin diber Natan el David. And all of these words and this entire vision that Natan got, he came and gave to David. And so now let's just take a step back and understand what just happened, right? David had the most beautiful of intentions, right? David pretty much said to Natan, I want to build God a house, right? And at first Natan was like, that's so fabulous. God's with you with everything you do. Of course he's going to be into this, right? Until God comes to him that night and is like, spoke too soon, right? You're not supposed to speak without my approval, right? I get why you would assume that this would be a good plan, but it's not. So you're going to have to take it back. But, right, this is like the biggest breakup speech ever, right? What is Hashem saying to David, right? He's saying, I'm actually saying no. right? I'm actually turning you down on your offer, but I don't want you to be insulted because I'm not saying no for any negative reason. And what's even more powerful is in this parak, there is no reason, right? Lefi hapshat, according to every pasuk we just read, there is no reason God has given that he won't let David build the Beit HaMikdash, right? So why didn't he let him? Why does he say no? Why does he then give him this whole, it's not you, it's me speech, right? And I love you and you're awesome. It's just, it's not going to be you, so it'll be your kid, right? Why does he do that? Now, the answer most of us have heard, or I would say the most popular answer that is out there, is the idea that David has spilled too much blood in his lifetime, that he has killed too many people and there's too much blood on his hands. I do want to give legitimacy to the answer because it's actually from Divrei Hayamim, right? It's actually in the text in Divrei Hayamim that that's what God said, but it is nowhere in our story. I want to acknowledge that nowhere in Shmuel Bet does God give a reason for not letting him build the Beit HaMikdash. So yes, obviously that there's truth to that since it says it in Divrei Hayamim and we're acknowledging it. But I think what God is pretty much saying is, I didn't ask for it, right? If we're just going with the pshat, I didn't ask for it right now, and therefore it's not for right now, right? Meaning there's something to the concept of the phrase or the bracha that we often give pregnant women of b'sha'a tova, right? We say to women who are expecting a baby, b'sha'a tova. It should come at the right time, right? And when someone is experiencing that, right? When someone especially is in their final weeks of pregnancy, right? Someone says b'sha'a tova, and you're just like, no, no, I would like it tomorrow, right? I don't know what a good time is, but a good time feels like right now, right? I would love a good night's sleep again. I would love to be able to turn over in bed and not feel like so many other choice things, right? And you hear b'sha'a tova, and a little bit it hurts, right? No, no, b'sha'a karov or b'sha'a achshav, right? And that concept is weird, right? And then you think about the bracha for a minute, and not just for a pregnant woman, but this, I believe, should be one of the greatest bracha we give everybody. Because what are we really saying to the woman who is overdue even, right? B'sha'a tova, if it comes too early, something could go wrong with the baby. Maybe the lungs are underdeveloped. Maybe it didn't gain enough weight. Maybe it needs the utero life for longer. And you don't want it to be in there too long because then delivery is that much harder because the baby grew too much, right? Or other complications that are going to go on for the mother. B'sha'a tova means there is an exact right time for things, right? And when people are in any stage of life, the bracha really should be b'sha'a tova, right? Not just, oh, I hope you get married tomorrow. I hope you find your person, whatever it may be. No. In life, b'sha'a tova is a real koach. It's a real blessing. Timing is everything because you can speak to so many couples, either who were looking for each other and didn't find them when they were looking, and it took years longer than they were hoping, or the child that they were hoping for that took longer than they were hoping, or whatever the challenge someone is going through. When they have the full hindsight of the story, when they're able to look back at every piece of the story, they're able to say, oh, timing actually did work out for the best. Oh, there were things that had it been earlier or later wouldn't have worked in the way it worked now. And what Hashem is teaching us in this speech is the true definition of b'sha'a tova. Right, David? I love what you want to do. And I'm not saying a no. I'm saying b'sha'a tova. And right now, that is not the time, right? There are things that need to get done. It happens to be right now, David. You're right. The dust settled and there are no wars, but give us a parak and wars are going to re-ensue. And therefore, we don't have time for that, right? And when we are busy in a war, right, which sadly we're all too familiar with, nobody has time for construction. Nobody has time for the extras in life, right? Shiputzim go on a back burner. Forget that we just don't have workers, but just that concept of all the extras, are not for now. And Hashem is saying, I see the big picture, and right now is not a good time. I don't want to say no to you. So I'm going to let your son do it, and I'll just ensure that that time is the right time. And I think to me, that's one of the most beautiful elements of this parak. It is a reminder to us that we don't have the same vision that HaKadosh Baruch Hu does. And sometimes we have the best of intentions, and we say we want X, Y, or Z because we think we're going to do all the best things with it. And Hashem is saying, I'm not saying no. I'm just saying not right now. And sometimes not right now is the greatest blessing possible. Because can you imagine David starting building the Beit HaMikdash and then either pressing pause to go to all the wars he's going to have to go to, or saying, no, how could I press pause on building God's house? So instead of sending all my chayalim to that war that I need them to go to, I'm going to keep all half of them back so they can still be doing the labor, et cetera, and then us lose a war because we don't have all the staff that we need. Meaning God is looking at a bigger picture that we are not privy to. But here he's telling David, B'sha'a tova, but with thanks and with love. And I'm going to give you all of these consolation prizes so that you see how appreciative I am in it, right? So with that in mind, he hears the speech, and now we continue in our story. Pasuk Yud Chet, Vayavo hamelach David, Vayeshev lifnei Hashem, right? David goes, he heard this whole speech, and he sits before God, aka he goes to the cute little tent, right? To the little tent that he thought was nothing, of no value and too small, etc. But it's letting us know it's still Lifnei Hashem. It's still sitting before God, Vayomer, and he says, Mi anochi Hashem Elokim. Umi beiti ki havitani ad halom. Right? Oh my God, I'm a nobody. I am nothing. I don't deserve all of this. Oh my gosh. You're doing so much for me. And what we're going to see over and over again is how he refers to Hashem as Hashem Elokim, which we're going to talk about when we read the whole thing. Pasuk Yotet, Vatiktan od zot beinecha Hashem Elokim, vatideber gam el beit avdecha lemirachok. V'zot Torah Adam Hashem Elokim. And he says, oh my gosh, but like I should be even smaller. I'm a nothing. And you, God, are going to be talking about long-term and like the distance of my family. Right? And again, Hashem Elokim, again, right? Pasachaf. Right? How could I possibly like say anything else? Right? What's there to say after you promising me a dynasty, a child that will literally have his throne forever, that my dynasty is forever, that my kid is going to build the Beit HaMikdash, that you're not going to leave me, right? Oh my gosh, what else can I respond to this? You know me, Hashem, right? Ba'avor dvarcha ukilibcha asita et kol hagdula hazot. Right? Everything I am is because of you. Everything I do for you is because of you. Lahudia et avtacha, right? Everything you have shown to me, everything you have introduced me to. Wow. Pasuk Kafbet, Al kain gadalta Hashem Elokim. Ki ein kamocha. Right? This is why I think you're so huge, so great, so amazing, because there's no one else like you. Ve'ein Elokim zulatecha. There is no God other than you. B'chol asher shamanu ba'aznenu. Right? In everything you've said, it's not just because you've said that. You are the end-all, be-all. Umi ka'amcha ki Yisrael. Right? And your nation that you let me be in charge of. Wow. Right? Like this is the nachat note. Right? Like your kids, they're the best, right? You let me be like the teacher or in charge of your kids. Oh my gosh, I'm so lucky because you have the best kids ever. Goy echad ba'aretz. They are one nation in this land. Asher halchu Elokim liftot lo la'am. Right? This is the nation that you chose to be your people. Lasim lo shem, and you put your name on them. La'asot lachem hagdola v'noraot la'artzecha, right? And you've done all these wonderful miracles, all this amazing things, and that we can live in your land. Mipnei amcha asher padita lachem mitzrayim, goyim ve'elohav, right? for this nation that you designated from Mitzrayim, from the other nations, from all the other gods they were looking at. Pasuk Kaf Daled, "V'tichonen lecha et amcha Yisrael lecha la'am," right? And you established these people as your nation ad olam, forever. Va'ata Hashem. Hayita lahem la'elokim. Right? Wow. You are amazing. You found these people. You chose these people. You let me be in charge of them. You've designated them as your people forever. Right? And now I'm in that same bracket. Pasuk Kaf Hey va'ata. And now Hashem Elokim again. Right? Hadavar asher dibarta al avtacha va'al beito. Right? It's almost like he's scared to say the words out loud. Right? But remember what you said about your servant and about his family, right? Meaning I'm too scared to say out loud that you promised me that it would be a dynasty forever from my family. So I'll just be ambiguous and like just talk big. Akim ad olam, right? And you said you would establish it forever. Va'aseh ka'asher dibarta. I'm just begging you to do what you said, right? I'm scared to say it out loud. I'm scared to jinx it, but I'm just begging you to hold on to that and keep your word. Pasuk Chafav, Vayigdal Shimcha ad olam lemor. Right? And your name should be the best forever. Hashem Tzvakot Elokim al Yisrael, Ubeit David Avdecha, Yenachon Lefanecha. Right? You should be king forever and the God of everything forever. And the house of your servant David should be good and established forever. Ki ata Hashem Tzvakot Elokei Yisrael. Right? And because you are the God of the Jewish people, Galita et Ozen Avdecha Lemor, you revealed and opened my ear, right? And you said, Ayet Abnelecha, Alkin Matza Avdecha Libo Lehitpalel Elecha et Hatfila Hazot. Right? Because you acknowledged me and you said, oh, it's okay, your kid is going to do it and there will be a home for you. That's where this tefillah is coming from. Like I'm almost out of words because you said yes, but kind of, and wow. Pasuk Chafchet, V'ata Hashem Elokim, and again, right? And now Hashem Elokim, Ata Hu HaElokim, Udvarecha Yiyu Emet. Right? You are the king, and all of your words are truth. V'tzidaber et avdecha et hatova hazot, and therefore I have to believe it. It's like literally he's talking to himself to convince himself it's true. Like everything you say, God, is true. So this must be true, right? What you said about me, it's got to be true. All this amazing stuff, it's got to be true. Pasuk Kaftet va'ata, and now Ho'el uvarech beit avdacha lihiyot liolam lefanacha. Ki ata Hashem Elokim dibarta umi berchatcha yivarech beit avdacha liolam. Right? And your servant, I am your servant, right? Because you are my God. And everything you said, all of the brachot, you should continue to bless your servant forever, right? And it's somewhat poetic and it's somewhat weird and it's all over the map, but that's highlighting for us David's emotions. He is all over the map, right? Because in theory, he was rejected. In theory and in practice, right? God said, you are not going to do this. But he's just saying, okay, I heard that, but you know what else I heard? I heard I'm going to have a kid that takes the throne. And I heard that his throne is going to be forever. And I heard you will not leave me. But what does he call God over and over and over again? Hashem Elokim, right? If the name of God appears twice, you're supposed to enunciate Hashem Elokim, but there's such a powerful message to that, right? What is he saying to HaKadosh Baruch Hu here? And this is, I am pulling together from last semester, so hopefully if you haven't listened to those recordings, you'll be able to follow, or you'll be able to go back to those recordings and follow, right? The concept of until the story of the Aron, his whole perception, David's whole relationship with God was out of ahava. It was out of love, right? You open Tehillim and you hear the love oozing out of David, right? Oh my gosh, you're the best. You saved me from Shaul. You saved me from Goliath. You protect me in the cave. You are my everything. And it was kulo ava. It was complete and utter love of God. And when the scene that Uzzah dies in happens, when Uzzah touches the Aron and dies, everything shifted for David in terms of his understanding of God. Because all of a sudden he's like, wait a second, how could that be? The benevolent God that I love would never do that. And it enters into this world of yirah, of din, right? Of a different level of God that he had not yet related to. But what David is acknowledging in this speech of Hashem Elokim, Hashem Elokim, Hashem Elokim, right? Hashem, Yud Ke Vav Ke, we say is the name that represents mercy, of Rachamim. And Elokim is the name that represents din, of judgment. And what David is acknowledging here is, I'm now learning to synthesize the two. I'm now understanding that you can't have either alone, right? To have just love of God, something is missing. And to have just fear of God, something else is missing. And I need to synthesize this. So when I only responded to God out of Ava, I would be disappointed in this speech, right? I would have been disappointed that God told me no. But there's a din element, there's an Elokim element. And if I only heard the no and I didn't hear all the incredible gifts God was giving me in the same speech, right, that would also have been terrible. And therefore, I'm acknowledging what took me years to get to, that Hashem Elokim is both. I'm relating to God in both elements of Rachamim and Din, and being able to hold both of those emotions, right? That's what we spoke about last shiur, this concept of the beauty of David holding two truths in the same moment. And here David is saying, okay. Now I'm applying it to this answer of my request. No, you may not build the Beit HaMikdash. Yes, you will have an eternal kingdom, and it will be of your dynasty, and they will build the Beit HaMikdash. Oh, and when I put those two together, I can relate to God in such a gorgeous way and such a meaningful way. And therefore, my answer to you, God, or my tefillah post facto is of hoda'ah, right? Is of thanks, because I need to be able to hold those both together. And now that I do, I can be charged in positive energy to do this and to let this continuation happen, which is exactly what he does, right? But he doesn't just press pause here, right? The next parak is not going to open with, oh, okay, so like, I guess I'll just sit back and let things happen. No, that is not David, right? So let us continue in his story, parak chet, pasuk aleph, Vayihi acharechein, right? And it was right after this. Like literally, we get the impression like he finished his tefillah, he slept on it, and now he is now on to his next piece, right? And it was after this, Vayach David et Plishtim. Right, David now goes to war and conquers Plishtim. Vayichni'im, vayikach David et meteg ha'ama miad Plishtim. Right, and he conquers them, and he's getting ground. Pasuk bet vayachet Moav, vayimadedem b'chevel hashkemotam arza, vayimaded shnei chavalim lahamit umlo hachevel lahachayot. Batihi Moav leDavid la'abadim nosei mincha. Right, and you have to take a second. You're like, wait a minute. Perek Zion told us he had no enemies, right? Perek Zion said that because he had no enemies and things were calm, that's when he came up with this idea to build the Beit HaMikdash, right? What are all these wars? And as we slowly are going to go through Parakhet and unpack, yes, I don't think he's initiating these wars just to start wars, but it's this idea of like, oh, okay, well, if I'm not meant to build the Beit HaMikdash, I'm going to do everything in my power to make it as simple for Shlomo. He doesn't know it's Shlomo yet, right? Shlomo is far from the story, but Sheva hasn't even entered our realm yet. She will next week, right? But here it's just, okay, I need to do everything to literally get the ball rolling. And how do you get the ball rolling? you literally ensure that we're not going to have a war when time comes for building. So I'm going to start navigating all these relationships. I'm going to start fighting some battles so that either I conquer more territory and earn money for the Beit HaMikdash, which I'll do with some of these wars. And for other nations, I will instill the fear of God in them, right? So they're not going to start up with me or my son or the next generation, right? So that I can just ensure peace, right? To me, Parak Chad is the title from Pirkei Avot, from the Mishnah in Avot, where it says, Lo alecha hamlacha ligmor, right? It's not on you to finish the job, but v'lo ata ben chorin lehibatel mimena, right? Just because you're not going to finish the job doesn't give you a free pass not to be involved, right? Meaning, just because it's not going to be your name on the plaque or you're going to be the one cutting the ribbon outside of that building doesn't mean you don't have to be the one investing. And therefore, David, Perek Chad is a story of investment. Perek Chad is, I heard you, God, and now I'm going to do everything in my power to ensure it happens, right? So he goes to war with Plishtim, and then in Pasuk Bet, he just went to war with Moab. And it ends that war with Moab, Vati Moab David Lavadim, Nosei Mincha, right? They literally are waving the white flag, right? Saying, no, 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 we'll be your servants, right? Here are gifts, right? Here are taxes, right? Whether he's going to use them as literal slaves to build things, or he's just going to take their tax money and these gifts and put it towards the treasury, which we'll see for some, right? Pasuk Gimel, Vayach David et Hadad Ezer ben Rehov melech Tzova belachto lahashivo biyad nahar prat, right? And now David's taken down Hadad Ezer, right? He just keeps going. Pasuk Daled, Vayilko David mimenu elef ushva me'ot prashim ve'esrim elef ish ragli. Vaya'aker David et kol harachev, v'yoter mimena mea rechev. Right? David is literally conquering chariots, hundreds of chariots, thousands of men. Right? He is plowing through. Pasakeva tavo Aram Damesek. La'azor lahadad ezer melech Sova. Right? So Hadad Ezer, who he is at war with, starts bringing in allies. Right? So he brings in Aram of Damesek. But Vayach David ba'aram esrim u'shnayim elef ish, right? Nope. But David takes them down, right? This is going to be a very verbose story of all of these enemies, but the picture will be very, very clear as we go through. Pasuk Vav, Vayasem David nitzim ba'aram damesek vatihi aram leDavid ba'avadim nosei mincha, right? And these allies that came to help Hadad Ezer, David totally overtakes them until they become slaves to David, and they have to bring these gifts and taxes. Vayosha Hashem et David b'chol asher halach. And God is with David every step of the way, right? Everything he is trying to do, God supports him. God is ensuring gets done. Pasuk Zayin, Vayikach David et shiltei hazahav asher hayu el abdei Hadad Ezer. Vayivi'im Yerushalayim. Right? So now what does David start doing? All the spoils of war, specifically, and he'll go, metal by metal, right? All the gold he now takes and brings to Yerushalayim. Pasuk Chet, Umi betach umi borotai arei hadadezer lakach hamelach David nechoshet harbe ma'od. And now that we conquered Hadadezer, he's now going through their cities, and now he's collecting the bronze and the copper, right? Meaning he's literally creating a treasury, not for his melucha, not for his kingdom, for the building of the Beit HaMikdash. Right, Pasuk Tet, Vayishma Toi Melech Hamat, Ki David et Kol Chel Hadadezer, right? Word is spreading, right? David is just conquering people. So Toi, this king of Hamat, hears what happens. Pasuk Yud, Vayishlach Toi et Yoram beno el Melech David, Lish'al lo l'shalom u'levarcho, al asher nelcham b'Hadadezer v'yakehu, ki ish melchamot Toi, haya Hadadezer biado, Hayu klei kesef, uklei zahav, uklei nefoshet. Right? So Toi comes, or rather, he sends his son Yoram to David, and Hadadezer was an enemy, right? He heard about it, but it's not necessarily instilling fear. It's score, right? You just took down my enemy. So I have to give you gifts and I have to thank you for that. AKA, I'd like you to keep killing my enemies and protecting me, right? So with him, he brings klei kesef, uklei zahav, uklei nefoshet, right? All of these incredible, wealthy signs of his place of origin, right, of where he's coming from, saying, there's more where this came from, right? You keep helping me. You keep not attacking me, but getting rid of my enemies. I will keep bringing you gifts for your temple you want to build, right? Pasuk in Aleph, Gam otam, Bish HaMelech David Lashem, right? And what a gorgeous word, right? These two, David Hikdish, right? Kadosh, we always translate to mean holy, but it means holy because it means to be designated and separated for something miyuchad, for something specific. And here it's finally explicitly saying, David is taking all of this money, all of this gold, all of this silver, and separating and designating it to Hashem. Im hakesef v'hazahav asher hikdish mikol hagoyim asher kibesh. Every one of these wars is not just to create a diplomatic security, but it is also to collect all of this money to build the Beit HaMikdash, right? We all know how expensive building is stam, but the Beit HaMikdash is out of gold. It's out of gold-covered wood. It's out of all these incredible things, and he doesn't want to have his son worry about it, right? This is such a reminder to us of how we all are, right? I want to ensure that everything I do is to make the generation after me's life a little bit easier, right? And that's exactly what David is doing to help the uneven thought of Shlomo HaMelech. Pasuk Yud Bet, מארם וממואב ומבני עמון ומפלישתים ומעמלק ומשלל hadad Ezer ben Rechov melech Tovah, right? This is the list of nations he has either just conquered or been such a threat to that they are waving their white flags in one hand and bringing gifts of gold, silver, and copper in the other, right? We just want you away from us, right? We are petrified of you. Pasuk Yud Gimel, Vayas David Shem Beshuvo Mehakoto et Aram Bigay Melech Shmona Asar Elef. Right? David clearly makes a name for himself because he comes back after taking down, right, 18,000 men of the army of Aram that we fought earlier, but these thousands, right? This is a crazy number. Pasuk Yodalad, Vayasem Edom Netzivim, B'chol Edom Sam Netzivim, Vayukol Edom Avadim LeDavid, right? And it keeps going. The wars are now spreading, and the rumors and the fear is spreading. Now it covered to Edom. Vayosha Hashem et David, B'chol Asher Halach, right? And it repeats it a second time to understand how much God is supporting this, right? It's, wow, I see how charged you are, and I will support you every step of the way. I will be with you every step of the way. Pasuk Tedvav, Vayimloch David al Kol Yisrael. Right? David is the king over the entire nation, which is a feat for him, but will, as you go through Sefer Melachim, it's a feat that very few, if any others, are able to hold on to. Vayihi David oseh mishpat utzedakah l'chol amo. A beautiful reminder of the most important two things that a king is meant to be for. Number one, he needs to lead us in war, but number two, he's the Supreme Court. Right? That's where any trial or any gripe that people have that the smaller court systems couldn't figure out, they go to the king. And it's letting us know that David is serving both roles as he should. He is leading us in war, and he is ensuring mishpat utzedakah and morality in his time for the entire nation. And now it will wrap up this parak with all of the important people that worked for him. Pasuk Tetzain, V'Yoav ben Tzruya al Hatzava, right? Yoav ben Tzruya, right? His nephew is in charge of the army, is his main general. Yehoshaphat ben Achilud Mazkir, right? Yehoshaphat is his secretary. Zadok ben Achituv v'Achimelech ben Aviatar Kohanim. Right, he has the two Kohanim, Tzadok and Achimelech, and it just, to pause and go back. I know I'm going back months and months to the beginning of our learning together of David's diary, right? But Nov, the city of Nov, was the city that Shaul wiped out, right? Because he thought they were conspiring against him with David because David took Goliath's sword and the food, and only one survivor, Aviatar, right, survived Nov and ran for his life to David. David protect him. But what's amazing, Aviatar's father, who had been killed, was Achimelech. So here we get to meet Aviatar's son that he named after his father, right? And that grandson of the original Kohen that protected David is now David's Kohen, right? So there's a beautiful cyclical feel that this pasuk gives us, which at least for me, just, gives you a little bit of nechama after everything that went on in Nov and the trauma that David dealt with of feeling like he caused all of that to happen, right? To be able to see that, oh no, the family still stayed connected to David and he let them stay in the highest of ranks in the Melucha. And Usraya Sofer, his scribe was Sraya, Ubenayahu ben Yehoyada, v'hakriti v'hapliti ubenei David kohanim hayu, right? And these last group of people, Benayahu and the Kreti and the Pleti, these were David's men. This was his inside circle, and you have this feeling of a complete establishment, right? He has set the ball rolling for the Beit HaMikdash to be built. He is now collecting the funds. He is ensuring that all the enemies around us feel too intimidated to start up and to do anything. And what an incredible way to wrap it up and here, look at my entourage staff, right? This is my established kingdom that we wrap up Perikhet, right? Of this feeling of security, of this feeling of good, established, positive vibes coming for David, right? Obviously, those of us who know how the story is going to continue, sadly, things are going to go downhill pretty quickly, especially come Parak Yud Aleph, right? But Parak Tet will start wars that he didn't foresee, didn't want, which will take us in this downward spiral. So we'll pause here for tonight, and next week we will pick up with the beginning of this downwardness and enter the story of David and Bathsheba. But hoping that we can take this momentum and this excitement of rejoining together to be able to get to see the next piece of David's life, even if it's a little more challenging. And Bisorot Tovot, and have a wonderful night.
Thank you. Thank you.